School is undoubtedly a terrible experience, most of the time anyway. However, there are those rare moments where you actually enjoy the time you spend there. It's kind of crazy. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Some of these moments were probably enjoyable due to the fact of how awful they were, man. Some of these are just bad. So yeah, just let me know if you guys want this kind of stuff. Thanks, okay. So there's this one kid in elementary school who was a complete and utter train wreck. For the sake of this video, we're just going to call him Mr. Little Boy. Mr. Little Boy was always doing these terrible things that would get him either embarrassed or in trouble, most of the time resulting in both. The worst part of this was the fact that he wasn't even trying to be a bad person, man. If you look past the dumb things, he was a pretty nice fellow. Now, what did Mr. Little Boy do that was so bad, you may be asking? For starters, he could not talk in front of a large group, let alone one person. He managed to stutter so much that he would work himself into tears. Mr. Little Boy would constantly cry. I kind of feel bad for him. None of this was really his fault, it just kind of happened. We'd always go out to recess and play tag and all of that. When we'd tag Mr. Little Boy, he'd never be able to catch us because he was a really sluggish guy. And of course, he'd get so frustrated that he'd just start crying. One of us would have to tag him to end it all. This went on throughout most of elementary school, and now he goes to a different middle school, where I hear he gets himself into even more trouble. He got suspended one time. Oh yeah, and this one time in kindergarten he cried so much he threw up. Field trips in elementary school were at most good. Most of them were quite mediocre, but there was some enjoyment to be found in them. The one exception to this time was when we went to Camp Purgatory. I don't know whether I loved or completely despised that camp. However, it was one of the most strangest and most interesting times of my life. It was the end of the 5th grade year, and we were all really excited to go on our big overnight trip. We were doing some sort of project in the morning. I don't know why we were doing it, but I digress. Whatever we were doing had to do with a hot glue gun, and the teacher asked me to grab it off the table. What I didn't realize was that the hot glue gun had already been turned on, and a small amount of hot glue had seeped out from the tip of the gun. I went to pick it up and got the glue all over my hands, so that was really ouchy. It was like the end of the world for my 5th grade brain. Luckily, I went to the bathroom and ran some water over it before it solidified. An hour passed and we loaded up onto the bus. There were actually some pretty nice charter buses with comfy seats, and my group of hooligan friends and I made it to the back of the bus to claim our seats as the cool kids, finger quotes. What we didn't realize was that we were right next to the bathroom on the bus, so that was a really sucky experience. After about an hour, we began singing those annoying road trip songs you hear all the time, and the bus sounded something like this.
500 500
We made it to Camp Purgatory, and in the process gave our teacher a massive headache, so that was fun. We spent an hour looking through this aquarium of stuff they had. It was pretty decent. Then we marched over to this river where we were supposed to wade in and catch some animals and put them in a tank. That turned out to be pretty fun. So we did the same thing over at the edge of the lake. We weren't allowed to full-on swim, but wading was fine enough. While most of the class splashed around aimlessly, my two friends and I were on a mission. To keep their identities safe, we'll call them Tito Jackson and Doug Zug. We were on a mission to catch a fish with our new nets. As we were inching through the waters, we all suddenly fell in. It turns out there had been a really large branch underneath the water that we tripped on. However, we weren't the only ones to fall in. There was this one kid who had literally broken his arm and was in a cast, and he fell in, so that caused a huge mess. I'm pretty sure he had to leave. I don't know. The greatest part of all of this was that Mr. Little Boy himself fell in the lake, and apparently he couldn't swim pretty well. He was flailing around in the shallow end, but no one could help him because they were helping the broken arm boy. You see what I mean? Crazy experience. So our class trudged up to the cabins where our belongings were safely tucked away. I went into a room with some of my friends and picked out one of the beds to sleep on. We spent the evening around the massive fireplace singing some camp songs and all that. It was pretty boring, but hey, we got the marshmallows, so that was pretty nice. We went back to our cabins and spent a couple hours messing around and generally causing a ruckus. Around 10 o'clock at night, one of the guys I was sharing a room with vomited all over our sink. It turns out he'd had some sort of allergic reaction or illness when we'd come to the camp, and he didn't even bother telling anyone. He continued to have a terrible experience until the ambulance showed up and took him away from the camp. By now the entire grade had their windows open as the legendary soldier wished us a final farewell. Not really, he didn't even say anything. The room reeked of puke and the guys I was with wouldn't shut their mouth, so I found a empty couch in the cabin and passed out there. The rest of the trip was pretty average and we rode home singing the same stupid songs we had sung the day we left. So yeah, thanks for the views, good time, good stuff.